requires patience, sacrifice, compromise, vision, endurance, realism, ruthless focus, and determination.
And I think also it has to do with the fact that I don't want to make this too long and like get into history in South Africa, but you and I have talked about this before. And this probably won't be in the briefing. I'll cut it out. But the Truth and Reconciliation Commission after the end of apartheid was a big mistake. The white South Africans did not learn a single thing from everything that I can see. White South Africans have not changed one bit since the time of apartheid. From everything that I can see, they haven't changed their mentality, they haven't changed their attitude, they haven't changed their opinions about their fellows, so-called fellow South Africans. I'd say fellow South with quotes or so-called because, come on, you're not African. But this is like this is to me, and obviously I'm a complete outsider and I don't know anything about anything with regards to South Africa, but it just seems like from the outside, it looks like you had an opportunity. Although, as I've said before, also, I know what the conditions were at the time and why they did the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. I understand what the reasoning was, what the political necessity was, what the economic necessity was of doing that. So, to what extent you really had an opportunity to deal with this problem, I don't know. To actually deal with the problem, your hands were sort of tied. But something has to be done about specifically these people, because you have a very malignant group of people. And obviously this doesn't apply to all white people in South Africa, but there's a significant number who have, particularly those who were the greatest beneficiaries of the apartheid system, who are in a time capsule in their heads, that they still think exactly the way, just like if you went in America in the 1970s, you could probably go into Mississippi somewhere or the backwoods of Alabama somewhere, someone who thinks that the Civil War is still going on. Someone who thinks that there's still slavery, still living on a plantation and still thinking that he can do what he used to be able to do or what his great-grandfather used to do. You still have people like that in South Africa whose minds have not changed at all. This is a malignant group of people in your country. And unfortunately, they have power and they have influence and they have money and they have support from the outside. And this, you have to find some kind of a way to deal with these people. And it's very, very tricky. And I'm not sure, I can't necessarily say how he would do it, but protesting in the streets doesn't solve the problem. Even necessarily voting this way or that way doesn't necessarily solve the problem. You have that. This is a very, very complicated, intractable sort of a situation because you weren't able to extract that cancer 30 years ago. And now it is metastasized and it's just still there, this malignant tumor of a population in South Africa that I don't know how, I don't know exactly what you can do about it. Obviously, I'm a complete outsider. You can tell me better whether I'm even on the right track in my diagnosis of the situation. But certainly you would probably know better about how it can be dealt with. But it seems to me that all of these issues of corruption, all of them, stem from that time. Stem from the fact that you never really had a full, you were never able to do a full reform of the power structure in South Africa. And then the ANC came into power, but they found themselves in that same machine that was not designed for Black or brown South Africans, colored South Africans, non-white. Since I know Americans are going to listen to this and they'll get triggered by the word colored. Non-white South Africans. the machine was made for white people. It was made for white South Africans. It was made for the benefit of white South Africans. So then now the new government, the post-apartheid government comes in. They enter into that same machine. They become a cog in that machine, and they become a minority benefit from that machine. They get a minority benefit from that machine, economically and in terms of influence and in terms of access to corrupt means of earning an income, an extra income, the same way that the whites had been doing. So the corruption is all the way from then, because you were never able to completely reform the system at the time of the new government. I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but
No.
it just seems to me like the police corruption, the organized crime, the violence, all of these things are symptoms of an untreated malignant tumor that has been festering in South Africa, obviously for longer than 30 years, but since obviously during the time of apartheid. But theoretically, you had an opportunity to surgically remove that tumor at the end of apartheid. But as I say, I know that your hands were tied in terms of what your real options were of how to do that. But I don't know how it can be fixed. I don't know how it can be fixed, because obviously if you have a Julius in office, all guns are going to be blazing against South Africa. Obviously, he's going to try to do a Mugabe or something, and be very, very stern and very militant. Although who knows? Once he gets into power, who knows? His tune might change. You might be saying all of these things because you're not responsible for any decision making. Once you become responsible for decision making, who knows what decisions you will make. But anyway, I'm going on and on. It just seems to me that the problem cannot be solved until you deal with this population in South Africa, and I don't know how you will do it.
It starts with our constitution that gives people the right to do just whatever it is, and scapegoat, sorry, not scapegoat, but so that people are not held accountable. You can see it, especially with those that have benefited from apartheid. The constitution does not force them to give back, which does not rightfully belong to them. You can see it with, especially when it comes to, it's all deemed under human rights. And we understand that we all have a right to a lot of things, but when criminality comes into play and where it thwarts justice, then the problem lies with the Constitution, which was influenced, and a lot of it was from the United States of America. So they have a hand in our Constitution. They shaped what it is that we use as the benchmark of where our laws derive from, how our processes work, etc., etc. So that is why we have been deliberately placed in the situation. And like you mentioned, corruption has happened during apartheid. So what the ANC is doing is not unique to what the apartheid government hasn't done before. It's just being obviously highlighted because of social media, and it's a modern world that we live in. But the apartheid government was able to hide that type of corruption from the rest of the world. Obviously, make it seem as if it's some sort of it's morals. It's based on morals. I mean, we still have a town, a whites only town called Aranya, and they get away with it because of the constitution, because it isn't, because it's on private land. Technically, it's on private land, which they have built up that way. They've got their own currency, they've got their own systems that they, have, that manages and runs this town, but it isn't. It's private property that they built up that way, that they've created this community where they don't allow non-whites, and also not even any white person can go stay there. They're very discriminating even against English-speaking white people. It's just for Afrikaners, which are the architects of apartheid. So it's still, you know, we still experience that this sorry, the discrimination. In South Africa, you even find that white people earn more than what others do. There was I was looking at the stats, and for the life of me, you know, the figures are not coming to my head, but it's the whites on top, white people, and then you find South African Indians, and then there's a huge gap between what a colored person earn per month compared to what a Indian person earn, which is closer to the white people, and then black people earn just below what colored people earn. And the huge gap, you know, that is, it's staggering to see that in this day and age that people still earn. A lot of it has to do with the fact that because of education, who has more education than others, but who has more access to education than others. And that is based on who has more wealth, and the wealth lies with white people mostly, and then with the Indian people. And then, like I said, there's this huge gap between position second, third and fourth is close to each other. And when you have that structure playing out, there you find the poverty levels of income, monthly income being something like 5,000 rand a month. That is a rent to some people at the lower income, you know, who can live on 5,000 rand a month, and black people like 4,000 rand a month, and they are expected to live on that, transport, pay for education, whatever. That is where you find the most crime, in those areas, because that is where you find gangsterism, in those poverty-stricken areas. So it is all by design that it has to do with the fact that you are being divided because of race, and then you are being divided not social class, but because of economics, and your earnings. And it is the white people that have majority of the farmland, like 70%. They own, or at least above 70% of the farmland, agricultural land, which means that they are the ones that are in charge of our food. They are the ones that obviously are in charge of commerce in that sector, which is run by the DA, by the way, now run by the DA. Johan Steenhuisen is the Minister of Agriculture. So, and that is a sector, obviously, that they took over when the GNU started, because they knew that is where the wealth is. They needed to be overseeing the wealthiest parts of South Africa, the wealthiest sectors of South Africa. Mining is still under ANC, but they knew that South Africans would not allow them to you know, take over mining. They know there had to be a compromise. They are still aware of those issues, that they can't just take over everything, and you know, anything just at will.
Yeah, the ANC is in charge of mining, but what about the mining companies?
That is white owned. That is international, white owned. But you find like Cyril Ramaphosa, his family is involved in mining. Like there's this clique that is only a select few
This is
of non-whites that is in
well,
mining, that
this is what
benefits financially.
yeah, this is what I meant about that. There's a minority who get a benefit from the system, the pre-existing system, and this is why they're not that concerned about having anyone in charge of mining, because they're in charge of mining because of the companies. And then the fact that the DA was strongly supported by or funded by the National Endowment for Democracy before that allegedly became defunded under the Trump administration. They received funding from the National Endowment for Democracy, which is basically a front for the CIA, basically engineering coups and overtaking governments through funding opposition groups above and beyond what the sitting party, what the actual legitimate, genuinely local domestic party can possibly do, providing them funding, providing them tools, providing them skills, and organizing and arranging and so forth, logistics, everything. The DA has gotten all of that. They have meetings with the American ambassadors, the American embassy. Prior to the election, they were meeting with the American embassy, with the Israeli embassy. They have all of these connections. So that also shows you what sectors in South Africa matter to the West. The areas that the DA wants to be in charge of. The DA insists upon being in charge of which ministries. That shows you which sectors of South Africa's economy or South Africa's government are of the most concern to the West and the most concern to America, and the most they are worried about losing control over. This is why they engineered or navigated or anyway facilitated the rise of the DA into the GNU, because we've talked about this before also, because everyone can see that the ANC is losing. The ANC is losing its popularity, largely because of, in my opinion, you know better, largely because of actually going along with the West in the first place, for compromising too much with America in the first place. This is why you're losing your popularity, because you're already selling out the legacy of the ANC in favor of making deals with the United States and being obsequious to the United States. And for example, letting Trump talk to you the way he talked to Cyril Ramaphosa, that when they met in the White House, oh, your English is very good, right? Isn't that what he said? Your English is very good.
Something like
Yeah. So they
you
know
are
that.
you are spot on when you said it is because of being aligned to the United States of America. That is exactly why the
Right.
ANC has lost popularity over the years, because people can see that it is not to their benefit. You obviously do still see some people that do not watch what is happening around them. They don't understand exactly what is happening, or that feel that we need America in our lands because otherwise, how are we going to eat? Based on their reasoning. But those are very few people. People are waking up to the fact that America is not good at all for our country. That we will never move forward, and that there will always be some sort of division that they want to cause. And even like you mentioned, the DA specifically, you can see where it is that the areas, the sections of the country that they care for, and the most that they care for is the Western Cape. That's where they've been for the longest time. That's where they would want to be. Yes, they would try to get to the rest of the country. Because I mean, who doesn't want to actually control the entire South Africa? But their baby is the Western Cape. That is where they want to be. That is where the wealth is. That is where it is being currently, the Western Cape is experiencing gentrification. Locals are being priced out. People cannot afford to live in the Western Cape. Imagine that. You're born there, your parents were born there, you can't even afford a normal house. The prices are ridiculous. Housing, food, they are being priced out. People are saying that Israelis are buying up. I'm still looking into that. I haven't found much to it. We can't say just because it's a non-white I mean, that it's a white person that it's an Israeli. We have to really look into that. But the gentrification is extremely alarming and concerning, because firstly, the non-whites, I'm talking about the coloreds, as well as black people, that is on the bottom end of the earning scale in the country, they will not be able to live in Cape Town if this continues, where the pricing of everything in that province skyrockets, the way that it has, which also means that they will continue with gangsterism, because that would mean that they would then take each other out, as well as they would still be with drugs, lots of drugs in those type of areas, which is part of this investigation that is happening, cartels and drug syndicates with other countries. It's an international on international scale in the Western Cape, in Cape Town specifically, where people from like cartels from South America, come to Cape Town, and there's they do communicate, and they do business and that type of thing. So it is a huge, a lot of corruption is happening within the Western Cape and Cape Town itself. Um, so it's not just like they would like to believe international markets. It's international markets in terms of drug merchants as well, and drug trade, illicit drug trades.
There's two things. There's at least two things that South Africans, and obviously not just South Africans, but everyone in the global South, and certainly in the Muslim world, two things about America that everyone has to come to terms with, or has to recognize and acknowledge. The first one is what you said, that they're basically bad for you and for your country and for your economy, for your political system, for your society. They don't have your best interests ever. They will exploit and destabilize and undermine and sabotage your country as much as they can. That's the first thing that everyone has to understand and recognize. And many, many people have understood this. But then the second thing that everyone has to recognize and understand, and this is the harder thing for people to recognize and understand, is that you don't need them. That's the reality. You don't need the United States. And we've talked about this on Middle Nation many times, that America was a global superpower by default, not because they earned it, not because they could compete with anyone else, only because there was no rival. Everyone else had collapsed. They cannot maintain, anyway, they're already, as I've said many times, they're already actually just a regional hegemon at this point. Anyone who still believes, like in South Africa, if you still believe that you need America in order for your economy to survive, when America is part of why your economy is already malfunctioning, if you still believe that America has that much power and is that important, you're just consuming the vapors of something that has already left. Because America, as I say, is already a regional hegemon, and they were only able to maintain their importance in the world for as long as they have been able to, because there was no competitor, because all of the other countries in the world didn't have a choice. And by the way, when I say for as long as they've been able to, that's been 30 years, just 30 years. We're not talking about a century. We're talking about since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and America was the only so-called remaining superpower, the one remaining superpower in the world, the unipolar world. This moment, this blip in history has already come to an end with the rise of China. It already came to an end with the rise of China. Now, South Africa has choices. And that's the one thing that America never wanted anyone to have, was choices. So as soon as South Africa has a choice, and they do, then America gets desperate. And they have to come up with a DA to come in and get into South Africa before they lose all power, because they already see that the ANC is losing their influence and their popularity because they're going along with America. So what does that look like? That the next government is going to be even more antagonistic towards America, and they will completely lose control and influence in South Africa. So they have to do something about it. But everyone, all of the countries in the world, all of the countries in the global South, and all of the countries in Africa and in Asia, in Latin America, so-called, and definitely in all of the Muslim countries, you need to get it out of your head that you need America for anything. Because you don't. You absolutely don't. And if they still got you convinced that you need them, then that you're the one who's giving them power now. They're not doing anything to give you any power.
It's a good reminder to people that we do not need the United States of America. And mind you, the people that I've come across so far that believe that we need the United States of America are the ones that are economically, they fine, they stable, they earn good money, and they're white. And even the Indians, it's those that have money. They believe that we need America. It's not us, because we don't see that America does anything for us, the Galats and the black people. We don't see that we need America because we don't see the benefits of it. We can see that who benefits are not the ones, we are not the ones that have been chosen to benefit. So that is a good reminder to people that we should never think that they bring businesses in, you know, that, or that, not that there's new businesses, the current businesses that are here, which is actually just based off exploitation. You know, I was watching a video, or just, you know, a snippet where this gentleman, I don't know who he is, but he was talking about the car manufacturing industry in South Africa, which is a American market, and or largely an American market. There is China, which is new, but whatever has been here for the last, since apartheid days, is American market. And he said there's a cartel happening in South Africa when it comes to the motor industry, or the motor manufacturing industry. So that is exploitation. Even during apartheid, it's cheap labor, and then they sell those vehicles at exorbitant prices to us in the country. And then they also obviously send it to other countries. But it's extremely expensive for us, even though it is being manufactured in South Africa. But it's done on cheap labor. Yes, it is probably above minimum wage or whatever, because we've got a Department of Labor. But at the end of the day, what they make on a vehicle is, you know, it is a large, far more than what they pay for to produce it in the country. So it has everything to do with the fact that it's exploitation, to obviously make money for themselves.
It's not even like when you talk about American cars, American car companies. This again, it goes back to the fact that you have the OCGFC, who don't necessarily care about America. So you can have what are identified as American brands or American companies in your country, and they don't necessarily care about America. You understand? So it's not necessarily that you need America. America, the government, so-called government of America, can take whatever position they want to take. But if you know, Volkswagen or Ford or whoever else is in South Africa, and it's good for them to be in South Africa, they're not going anywhere. So you can take whatever position you need to take with regards to America politically. America can't do anything to you. They can't do anything to you. You can maintain your relationships in the private sector as necessary, and take whatever strong stance you need to take politically with regards to the state of America, because you're dealing with a toothless tiger when it comes to America as a state. If you're dealing with the companies that have factories or manufacturing in your country, they're not there out of their generosity. They're there because it's good for them to be there. And they're not going to leave just because you have an attitude towards Donald Trump, or towards the White House, or towards this or that politician in America who's just going to be there for 4 years. You know what I'm saying? The company has interests that are much more important to them than patriotism. Than if South Africa or the South African government takes a strong stance that the current momentary administration in Washington takes exception to, there's nothing they can do to you. It doesn't matter. This is what I mean. People have to understand. All these countries have to understand. You do not need America at all. You don't need to fear them at all, especially if you have good relationships already with other potential economic partners, like the most important of which are China and the GCC. These are the two most important economic partners that anyone in the global South can have right now, is China and the GCC. And if you have those, who needs America? They're not giving you anything anyway. Like I said, even if they have companies in your country, like I said, that's not charity. They're doing it because they need to be there, not because you need them there. That's where they need to be. You hold all the cards in the global South, and it's time for everyone in the global South to understand that America is doing nothing but bluff at this point, and they've been bluffing for at least the last 10 years.
In terms of, you know, the manufacturers, the vehicle manufacturers, if it was in terms of like policies, if it is that they didn't need us, they would have left decades ago. They've been here
Exactly.
since apartheid days. They would have left if they didn't need us. That speaks
Exactly.
volumes because some of them have left. So they would have left if they didn't need us. And that South Africans in this context should understand that they can threaten to leave, but there are alternatives. China, for one, is offering alternatives. And we are innovative. We don't need to be dependent. Human beings naturally are innovative. When you are going through struggles, the first thing you learn to do is to be innovative, to make do with what you have and do something about the resources that you have. So that is something that Africans, South Africans, Africans, the global South can be proud of. Um, that we are resourceful and innovative, and that was because of necessity, because of being subjugated. We are able to come up with a plan, come up with ideas to do things. We are not just strapped into this one dimensional things must be handed to us. But if we are going to allow propaganda to tell us that we are not innovative, that we can't solve our own problems, then we will be at the mercy of the United States of America. And they want that because they are the ones that disseminate information to us through their media, through their movies, through anything, any which way to tell us how we are not important and they are, important. And it's just a narrative.
It's a narrative, and through their movies, through their media, and through their political agents in your country, try to convince you of this. And that's another thing. Like you said, they could have left. We know that they need us because they could have left and they didn't. That can be said by every single country in the global South that's ever been colonized. The fact that you've been colonized shows you who needs who. You didn't go to their country to try to get their stuff. They came to your country because they need your stuff, and that situation hasn't changed. And the same way that they came to colonize, the same way that the Dutch and the British came to South Africa, the same way that the Americans are there, and the same way that those American companies are there, it's because they need to be there. And the fact that another sign of that, another way that you can understand that they're the ones who need South Africa, is that they supported and funded and worked with a political party so that they could get some power in South Africa, in the South African government. They didn't leave. They want to make sure that you don't kick them out. You understand? So their threats are really, really empty threats. They want to make sure that you don't kick them out. Not they can't threaten you with anything because they're the ones who are afraid that they're going to have to leave, that they will lose control and lose influence and lose their importance in the eyes of the country of South Africa as a nation. Thank you so much, Sister Nisa. That was extremely informative and insightful, and I think that everyone who's following Middle Nation will benefit from this very insightful and inside from the ground knowledge about what's going on in South Africa. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your insights with us. Jazakumullah khairan.
Assalamu alaikum.